Welcome to the Upshift podcast, where changemakers meet and commune and find out how each other is doing their part in changing the world. Today's guest, I have Dr. Melissa, who is an author, speaker, and coach. And today, listen up, folks, she has one thing that if we just shift that one thing inside all of us, we could have a nicer, calmer, compassionate world around us. She's going to tell us what that is. I left him hanging. Hey, Dr. Melissa.
Hey, Angel.
Welcome to the
so
show.
much. Thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited to be here since our first conversation, and I know this is going to be a good one.
Yes, okay. Now, you can keep them in suspense, or you can launch in to what that is, or even how you got to where we're going to go today.
Well, let's start with how I got there, because it was kind of an interesting path. I was actually a professional musician for a long time. Yeah, French hornist. I got to travel. I got to play with like really cool people like Ray Charles and Mannheim Steamroller. And I mean, just to be able to go and live your dream is amazing.
Yes.
But I'm hopelessly addicted to food, shelter, and clothing. And
Not the starving artist scene, huh?
No, I know it sounds glamorous, but it's not. After you've been on a tour bus for 2 months straight and you've had enough. Yeah.
The glory of the band life, right? It's like, it's not that great.
Right. They make it sound great, and it's really not. So I decided I need to get a job with benefits, and I got my first doctorate, got a college professorship teaching French horn, and moved out west to be able to do that. But within my very first term there, I was assaulted by one of my colleagues. And unfortunately, when you have a job like French horn professor, there's not a lot of places you can go. It's not there.
Pretty specific.
Yeah. So I ended up fighting it out for about almost 7 years and finally ended up having to leave my profession altogether because of the fallout. This was in my mid-40s. But when I left, I was like, well, what went wrong here? What was so wrong with this system? Why is it that people weren't connecting? Why is this okay? And I spun out for quite a while, another, 6, 7 years or so. But I finally came to, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, didn't you mind what was the insult? I mean, it must have been pretty big to turn your whole life in a different direction.
Well, it wasn't just an insult. It was an assault. He had me shoved up against a wall.
When assault, okay, yeah. All right, I thought just an insult. Okay,
No.
Oof. All right.
No, it was a physical assault.
Oof.
And,
all right.
Yeah. And when I went to the chair of my department, I was told that, who would have been both of our boss, I was told that if I was stirring up trouble as a junior female faculty member, that I was never going to get promoted. Like I cared about promotion. No. I'd been there 2 months. I wasn't thinking about promotion. And when I went to his boss, I was told that if I didn't like it, I could just leave. Well, where was I going to go?
Okay, I'm glad you clarified that, because that is a life changer. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it was. And there was no going back after that. And I mean, it just got worse and it spiraled way out of control. But that is what led me to where I'm at now. And what I study is empathy and leadership. I want to know where this is lacking, why it's lacking, and what we can do to actually teach it as a skill, because I do believe there's more than one kind of empathy. So I'm serious enough about it. I'm doing my second doctorate in interdisciplinary leadership, and my dissertation is on empathy and leadership because I think it's that important.
And I do think that that's how humans are going to need to communicate for the future. We can't backhand our employees. In the 80s, it was yell at them, and motivate them by fear. Like, you lost a job, like keep it in the closet, lady, or you're going to have to, find another job. Nowadays, people are more sensitive and they're more open and they're more out with their needs and their feelings. And if we want employee retention, I mean, just on a business level, we're going to have empathy, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, so I'm corporate and I'm also the woo-woo girl. So on the corporate side, describe what kind of leadership you're targeting with your message.
Well, I target 2 different audiences, really, because I do target the C-suite, because they're the ones that culture drips down from the top. So if
Right.
they're implementing empathy in their leadership, it's going to go to the whole company.
Right. Role model.
But yeah, exactly. Exactly. But the group that I really have hope for are those middle management people, the people that have to lead both down and up. They
Right.
really have contact with the most people, and they're going to be the executives of tomorrow. So they have time to practice this as a skill and get really good at it.
And they're the ones that see and speak and interact with the employees like on a weekly basis, the team meetings and things like that, where the C-suite check in with the managers, but these guys got the front line in their
Yes.
hands.
Yes,
Yes.
precisely.
All right.
Yeah.
So now we know who we're targeting. It's kind of like targeting children's, because there are leaders in the future. You're targeting middle management because of the impact they make and will continue to make. So you're impacting our future. Describe now, this will be interesting, empathy and the different types of empathy that you've discovered now. And then, of course, I'm going to ask how do you apply them. But let's start with empathy.
Yeah. So I haven't discovered them necessarily. I mean, there's lots of authors that have done so much work on this. Empathy was first kind of acknowledged as a thing right around the turn of the 1900s. So when you think about how far back a lot of these other emotions go, that's pretty new,
Yeah.
especially since at first it was considered kind of the same as pity. And we've come a long way from there. I mean, through study and that sort of thing. Because there's actually, according to one author, Batner, over this course of time, he's been able to identify 43 different kinds of empathy that fall into 8 broad categories.
Curious about that.
Yeah. So I actually hone in on 3 of them, because some of them really don't have anything to do with leadership. Because at the end of the day, empathy isn't about feeling. Empathy is about understanding and connection. The empathy that I feel what you feel that most people know of, that's one kind of empathy. But there's more than that. I mean, there's empathy with nature. There's empathy with animals. There's empathy between species. There's, a lot of things that just don't necessarily apply to leadership the way, we're talking about.
Focus. There's a lot. So
right. Yeah, exactly. So the 3 I really focus on are emotional empathy, which is the I feel what you feel kind of empathy. Cognitive empathy, which is I logically understand what you feel, but I don't feel anything. There's no feelings involved in that. And self-empathy, which is the one that I think a lot of leaders miss. Because if you can't understand and connect with yourself, how are you going to understand and connect with anybody else?
Which is the theme of my book. I love that.
Excellent. Perfect.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay, empathy. So some people connect that with, I want to say psychic, with intuition. What's your take on empathy and intuition? Are they interwoven, or I had some of your perspective on that?
Yeah. A lot of what I do is research. And because you can't necessarily quantify intuition, there's just not a lot of research on it. There's some stuff out there, but as far as to be able to interrelate it with empathy or, like the societal, how we think of an empath, just like there isn't a lot of stuff about self-empathy as well, because you can't really quantify it. So I tend to stick to what I can actually read and research and that sort of thing. Now, for me personally, I'm a big believer in intuition.
Yeah.
It's just not necessarily my wheelhouse in what I talk about.
So I have to bring this up because I've interviewed her on my show, Bonnie Casamasima, PhD professor at University of Tennessee. And she did a project on proving intuition with data, with interviewing people. And then she put it into a spreadsheet and a graph, if you're ever interested.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
Quantify. Yeah, intuition and empathy. So your work, where do you begin? How do you begin with empathy as a concept to a human?
I go right back to the understanding and connection piece. So really what empathy does, and I think this is a fantastic definition. I wish it were mine. It's not. But it's what allows me to get out of my bubble and into yours.
Yes.
It's a way for me to understand you, but in a way that takes the me out of it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If I have the me in it, immediately I'm going to start making comparisons, not because I'm a bad person, but because that's what human beings do. And the second comparisons are made, that's when we have judgment. And judgment and empathy cannot exist in the same space.
Oh,
ever.
Say that again.
Judgment and empathy cannot exist in the same space.
Love that. So I got to say this. In light of some of the things that have happened at this particular time in our life, they've been almost incomprehensible. But if people could converse with each other, engage with each other, using your definition, using your method of conversation, where I want to stand in empathy, meaning I take myself out, I want to hear what you have to say. That would be such a great thing to take on for us humans in America, for sure. We have a lot of divisiveness. So do you see the application? Gosh, yes, I know the answer to that is yes, of course. How can you spread your word? How are you working with people? How can you, even spread it like a virus? Get some people to use it and have them use it on their people and their people on their people. How are you doing this?
I'm breaking it down into an actual skill. And while, a lot of empathy is biological. We're born, most of us are born with a certain amount of it. There are kinds of empathy, like cognitive empathy, that you can learn. And that's where I'm starting. Because when people are like, oh, you're born with it or you're not my responsibility, immediately they step away from it because they figure, not it. But if it's something you can learn, if it's something that actually can drive profit, can drive innovation, can drive productivity, suddenly people are a little more open to hearing about it, because it's not just this fluffy thing that's just kind of out there. It's a real skill.
All right, let's dive deeper into that, because you've got my attention.
Yeah.
Go deeper.
Okay.
How does it affect profit? How does it, because that's always, and something that I'm dealing with in my book that's coming out is, how do you manage a person based on, performance, but their performance is not only the numbers, it's what's driving their performance. And you and I on the same page would say it would be the manager's empathetic managerial skills that could be that driver for that employee. Now,
yes,
are we going down the same path here? But I want you to take it now further down this path.
So the thing about empathy is, having empathy does not mean you don't have boundaries. Empathy means that you're in the feeling or in the state or in the moment with that person. So if you're having to give a hard review, that doesn't mean you don't give the review, but it does mean that you approach it with an understanding of this other person and with kindness. Kindness being different than nice. Nice is a social construct. It's being polite. It's how we lubricate our interactions so that it goes smoother. Kindness, like empathy, makes the other person the focus, so that you are coming at it from their point of view, through their eyes. If that's the case, you want this person to do better. You want this person to rise higher. And if it's a situation where they can't be there anymore, you want them to find the place that's going to be the best for them. And if where they're at isn't it, you understand that. So having empathy doesn't mean you're not going to have the hard conversations or that you're not going to make the big decisions, because these are businesses. If they don't make money, they're not businesses very long. But it does mean that there's a humane way of going about it. And within this humanity, there's data that does show that it drives profit, productivity, and innovation.
That's gonna perk the ears of those upper management. So how is it going to drive profit? Just make that quick, connect the dots. If you're doing an elevator speech to a CEO and you're like, this is what I do, boom, and this is how it affects your bottom line.
Because all businesses are made of people, whether it's your employees or your board of directors or your customers or whatever. And empathy is what allows you to actually make that human-to-human connection so it can drive your profit. Let's just talk about the number one suck on businesses, employee attrition.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
If you can keep that from hitting your bottom line, your profits are higher. We can talk about the connection to communication, because according to the Grammarly-Harris report, the U.S. lost $1.2 trillion with a T dollars to bad communication in 2024.
Wait, I got to write that down. 1.2 trillion
Yep.
in,
In just bad communication.
but 1 trillion in overall profits of companies. Where did they get this number?
Grammarly-Harris, they looked at all of these different companies and how they're wasting money because of bad communication, ineffective communication. There was a survey involved where they talked to all of these employees, and of these employees, 25%, 100% expected to get some kind of bad communication in a week that was going to upset their work. 25% expected it to be daily. They've actually
bad communication.
Yes. They've actually started calling this the 4-day work week, because this survey said that we lose 7.45 hours of work per employee per week with bad communication, with extra emails, with, this could have been an email, with meetings, with having to deal with the quantity of communication, with AI getting involved in confusing things. So, we could give everybody a day off every week and still pay them if we just communicated better.
Girl, you are so speaking the language of my book that's coming out. Is called What's Messing with Your Messages.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because the more of us start talking about this, the better.
Yes. Yes. What a message.
Yeah.
Given it seems so, well, to you and me, because I studied psychology and so and the body psychology and how things are so misconstrued so quickly. And people read the body, as you know, over what they hear. And the communication that you're talking about is, when I hear bad communication in business, I think about emails. How?
Yep.
Okay. So emails are mostly how people communicate, even with their managers and with their employees. Am I right on that? Let's start there.
I don't know the statistics for sure, but if you told me that was true, I wouldn't doubt it one bit.
Well, nowadays, back in the 80s when I was in corporate, if you had a question, you go into your boss's office, you walk down the hall.
Yes.
Or like, I'm really working on this project. Hey, buddy, in the same level as me, salesperson, what are you finding out in the field? And you have this interaction that's very organic. It's not click, 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 send, and then wait for the response, click, 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 or texting. So in an email, do you teach people how to be empathetic in an email?
I do, actually. It's more written stuff, because I do talk about text, and, there's Teams and people are adding in Skype, or, all these different messaging systems. And this idea that before you send, stop for a minute and think about who it's going to and how this could be perceived. The other thing that I actually find works very well is, the keep it simple part, keep it simple, stupid, because shorter is better if you're dealing with text, because we don't read everything. We gloss over a bunch of it. So
long emails, nobody reads. It's like, it's in my email, but they never got to the second paragraph.
Right. They might not have gotten to the second sentence. They just gloss over it.
Yes.
So, yeah, I talk about that a lot, because a big part of empathy is what's called perspective taking. And that goes all the way back to kindergarten of, well, how would you feel if it was you? Well, if you're going to send this long email, how would you feel if it was you? Are you going to actually sit and read it? Because if you wouldn't read it from somebody else, maybe you shouldn't send it with the expectation that other people are going to read it. And if you can kind of figure in other people's perspectives, especially when you're dealing with, say, executives where they're very busy, they don't have time to read, they're not going to dig through it. For your manager, are they going to pick through all of this? What are the keywords they're going to see? How tight can we keep this so that they get the gist of what you need? And exactly like you said, understanding that written communication is way different than face-to-face communication, or even phone communication, which we don't do as much either.
Yeah, we sure don't.
So
how would you, wow. I mean, this is, you make it seem to me so simple. I hate to ask you this, because I think I should know. Do you have a book that we can get?
I do. It actually just came out July 15th. It's brand new. It's called The Empathic Leader, How EQ via Empathy Transforms Leadership for Better Profit, Productivity, and Innovation.
Empathic leader. Okay. And how can people reach out? I feel like you've already, I mean, you have wham bam, thank you, ma'am, done this. And so it's so concise, maybe because you know how to communicate. Way to go, Dr. Melissa. So with the book, Empathic Leadership, it says it right there. Do you have a way people could connect with you? I've got CEOs that are listening to this are going, that's interesting. I wonder if I can have her come into my business, my company, have a discovery call. How do people get in touch with you?
So you can catch me on my website, which is EQ and that's V as in Victor, IA, empathy. And actually, if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get a free chapter of the book. So you can see kind of what it's about, what it entails, because I think of it as kind of a manual. And I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I have a podcast called The Empathic Leader. And that's on YouTube and Apple and Spotify and, the usuals.
Yes. So everyone, go at least sign up for the email so you can get a chapter. And I can tell anybody out there, whether you're a middle manager, a beginning entrepreneur, or C-suite, or even somebody in a relationship, because I guarantee that what she is writing about and talking about will help you have a closer relationship so that you can talk to each other, which is the number one thing people list as a characteristic they want in their loved one, is the ability to say what you need to say. And I would imagine that your book would address that also. Am I right?
It does. And I even mentioned that in the book that, it says leaders, but we're all a leader of one. It starts there. It starts with the self. Because if you can't do it for yourself and the people closest to you, you can't do it for others.
No, it starts with you. You got to be
Yeah.
one before you can be two.
Yep. Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm going to remember that.
Remember that. The funny thing about that is that was an elevator listing of how you got down to the basement levels. You had to go to B1 before you could go to B2. It was the weirdest thing. And I saw that when I was using this basement for some dance classes. I'm like, that's interesting, because you really do have to be B1 with yourself, got to be whole, got to be living your model before you can live this model for someone else or expect them to live that model with you.
Yes.
You're not being that for yourself.
Yes. I love it. I'm taking that with me because that's absolutely true.
B1 before you can be two. Well, right there. We can conclude, but okay, I just want to EQ via empathy.com. Get her book, The Empathic Leader, or just get on the emailing list, get a chapter. But I would reach out to Dr. Melissa. I mean, every human needs to learn empathic communication. So, is there anything else you want to leave us with today? Is there a nugget of wisdom or a little inspiration?
I think we're all adults here and we understand that we're not going to change the world overnight. But if we could just approach each other with a little more perspective on the other person and change our empathy by 5%, can you imagine how that would ripple out over time? Just 5%. 5%.
Just imagine. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. And wow, you have been an amazing guest that has really given the information so impactfully and so concisely. Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. It's been a pleasure. And I'm so excited to have you in my orbit because I think we're on the same path.
We are. I'm going to talk to you about that. Hang on.
Excellent.
That was author, speaker, and coach Dr. Melissa, who's written the Empathetic Leader book. She is all about empathetic leadership and what that means. And on this podcast, she concisely takes empathy and puts it into a skill set that can be learned, especially if you're in business as an entrepreneur, middle management, or C-suite. Definitely use this to affect your bottom line through lack of attrition, hopefully. And she has some wonderful numbers and very easy way to grasp how this can help you in not only your business, but in your relationships. And thanks for listening, y'all, to The Upshift. I'm Angel Howard, and you can get to know me better or get on my email list, please, 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 at angelhoward.co. On my website, you will find out about retreats coming up, new books coming out, and speaking that I might be in your town sometime soon. So please get on angelhoward.co and join the email list. Or you can also go to Amazon and buy my book, Issues in Your Tissues, or listen to my podcast, The Upshift, which is on Spotify and all your other podcast channels. Great to be with you today, and until next time.